Yeah, it says that. Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. You did it. It's okay.
Okay, you can go now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dareen.
Okay. Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks very much for your time today and for being here. And just let me also take a moment to welcome our audience who's watching us on Facebook Live at facebook.com/Palestine Academic. That's the Facebook live feed. So our conversation on Gaza will be with Mkhaimar Abusada from Al-Azhar University, Fikr Shalltoot, who is the Director of Medical Aid for Palestinians in Gaza, Omar Shaban from PalThink for Strategic Studies. You're all joining us from Gaza itself, so we're very thrilled to have you. And we also have with us Abdelhamid Siyam, who's a professor and former UN staffer, who's joining us from New York. So welcome to all of you. Thanks for your time. The talk has been organized by the Palestine Academic Group, which is a network of independent Palestinian scholars from international universities. And just to tell you a little bit about the group, the aim of PAL-AC is to broaden the deliberation on the Palestinian national project of liberation, as well as self-determination, and to safeguard the dignity and historical rights of the Palestinian people. So some of their previous events included the lobbying of governments to pressure them to change their stances when it comes to Palestinians. For example, last year, 2019, they lobbied the Canadian government to reconsider its position on Palestinian refugees when the government abstained from voting on the renewal of UNRWA at the General Assembly. So the aim of today's discussion, however, with all of you, as you know, is to spotlight the situation in Gaza in light of the coronavirus pandemic, and all whilst under an Israeli blockade for almost more than 13 years now, in fact. So if we can begin with starting to establish the facts on the ground and exactly what's going on with the coronavirus. Fikr, if I'll come to you first, some might be surprised to hear that the numbers of infections have stayed relatively low in the Gaza Strip, considering it's such a densely populated area. So tell us from what you're hearing, what the latest numbers are.
Well, actually, the latest number for the people infected with coronavirus was 20 person who was tested positive, out of more than 7 people who've been tested since the start of the receiving the first case in Gaza. These people, actually, the 20 people, they were quarantined in the only hospital right now, Rafah Field Hospital. Mm-hmm. And 14 of them have already recovered and 6 are staying in the hospital. So these are actually the actual figures that was distributed by the Ministry of Health and also the health cluster in Gaza. If you allow me actually to answer your question, why the number in Gaza quite limited.
Yeah, sure.
So far, actually, I believe there are some measures that the government in Gaza has imposed from the beginning, given that, you know, the health system is not really prepared, and living under blockade for more than 13 years make the preparedness is a big challenge actually for the health sector in Gaza, mainly the Ministry of Health. Therefore, they actually imposed mandatory quarantine for all people coming back to Gaza from Rafah crossing and from areas. So these people, they have to go directly to designated centers where they are keep them for 21 days in quarantine. They are not allowed to move until they test them and the tests are negative.
Right.
And actually these measures somehow was, you know, the population in Gaza and as people, you know, working in the health sector, we think, you know, it's really good measures given that the situation is really there and the health situation and the health sector and the health system in particular actually, you know, was on the brink of a collapse, as
Yeah,
was
okay.
described by
Tell
the
us
UN.
a little bit of, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, in fact, about the health system. We know that obviously it is on the brink of collapse, as you're saying. It's quite overwhelmed and underfunded as well. In terms of the number of ICU beds that are needed, in terms of the numbers of ventilators that are needed to treat coronavirus, what numbers are there?
So far, actually, the number that of ventilators, for example, it's 63 ventilators available in Gaza. Yani to be allocated, if there is a need for them. However, honestly, the plan that the Ministry of Health has been working with international organizations to reach, to have 100 ICU beds. Acting on a scenario that if there is some cases detected at the community level, so they are expecting around 2,000 people to be infected. Out of these, 400 will need hospitalization and 100 will need ICU beds.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, actually, I've been on a visit for the Gaza European Hospital, which is a hospital that the Minister of Health in Gaza designated to be the Corona hospital in case of the spread of the virus. And I have looked into the preparation that the Minister of Health is making in that hospital. Honestly, they have very good plan on the papers, but on the ground, actually, the situation is really worrying. I've seen some of the beds in there. They have received some donation of number of beds, but only 9 ventilators were made available for cases out of 100 they need. There are only a few syringe pumps, a few infusion pumps. There are some source for oxygens and vacuum in these rooms that they equipped with the beds to receive very critical cases of coronavirus, but it lacks very, very essential items. I mean, as I mentioned, the ventilators, the pumps, the monitors, the central stations to monitor the cases of the patients. And on the top of that, actually, they lack the human resources to work on these units. Actually, the Ministry of Health, they lack the personnel already, because of the long-term blockade, and number of people working in the health sector have left Gaza over the last few years, looking for training opportunities. When they leave, they cannot come back, or they decide not to return back given the difficulties and the lack of the salaries in Gaza. Right. So actually, it was a big challenge even before the start of the corona virus issue in Gaza. Okay. So now actually they are struggling about securing a dedicated, trained team to be ready to work with the cases if the outbreak happens.
Okay, Omar, let me ask you, Fikr is saying that the numbers so far are at 20 infections. Could these numbers actually be much higher? Because what we've seen in other countries is an underreporting of the figures because of a variety of reasons, one of which is maybe a lack of transparency on behalf of governments, or governments just trying to play catch up with the figures. Omar, Shaban? I'll need you to turn your microphone on, please.
Very good evening to you all and to our audience, and thank you very much. Actually, the reaction of the government and de facto authority in Gaza was different. We can categorize it in 2 phases. The first phase from 5th of March, where they did not take serious measures and they did not accept to declare the emergency state after the president has declared the emergency state in Gaza. A few weeks later, 15th of March, they started tough measures and they realized that they have to do they have to follow up different policy where they forbid the mosque, the prayer, the public gathering. And since then, they started to make a press release almost every day. They announced the information. There are some credibility in the statement of the government in Gaza. Some people think that this is not true, this is not accurate, because very much this been done. Now the government in Gaza did. The government now, till now in Gaza, they did a couple of thousand, not very much. They did some.
The sound is so bad.
We're going to try and sort this out in just in a moment. Omar, Shaban, please go ahead.
Some people think that the very little number of cases of corona in Gaza is due to the lack or to the small number of tests that are done every day. They don't do 1,000 every day. They do a couple of tests every day, and they do it in the quarantines. They don't do it on the large society. I think if they do it in the large society, they will discover more cases. However, they don't have the enough kits to do as much as it should be. In Ramallah, they do 1,000 tests every day. In Gaza, I think they do some 50 to 60 tests every day or 100 every week, which is not very much at all. What the government in Gaza succeeded to do is to put all the people who were outside on quarantine close to Rafah area for those who come from Egypt, and close to Beit Hanun or Erez area for those who come to Gaza. I think the number are accurate. We cannot deny it because we don't have the other side of the information.
Okay, thank you. Mkhaimar, what's your point of view on the situation in Gaza? What is the feeling there amongst Gazans? And is there a real worry that an outbreak is inevitable, despite now it seems that authorities there have somewhat of a handle on the situation, and I use that term loosely.
Many thanks, Dareen, for this program and for having me in this program. Let me start by saying that, yes, there is a lot of fear among the 2 million people here in the Gaza Strip that if the coronavirus were to erupt in Gaza on a large scale, that would be catastrophic to the 2 million people. As you mentioned at the beginning of this program, this is a very highly densely area compared to other areas in many places in the world. And also, speaking of Gaza being under Israeli siege and blockade for more than 13 years now, since the summer of 2006, in which Israel has imposed a number of measures to punish Hamas, to punish the Palestinians in what has been characterized as a collective punishment against 2 million people, and has turned Gaza into the largest open-air prison on the face of earth. Now, speaking of what is of the worry among the public here in Gaza, that when we look at what is happening in for example, New York, in Europe, in other places, it's not a joke. It's a very scary thing, and people are still taking things in a very relaxed way. Yes, the Hamas authorities, whether the health authorities or the Ministry of Interior, are taking very sincere and very serious measures to try to prevent and to combat the spread of the coronavirus in Gaza. But still, people here in Gaza are, they live their daily life in a way without taking the precautionary measures that are being taken in many areas of the world. And that has to do with the cases which has been discovered in Gaza, that all of these cases which have been discovered, the 20 cases, were cases that came outside of Gaza. These cases were either coming to Gaza from Egypt, and most of them, I think, they came from Egypt, or they are coming from Israel and the West Bank. And all of these cases which have been discovered were, as Omar mentioned, they were in quarantine, and that's why the virus has not been spread among the population. But speaking to many health officials here in Gaza, they're very afraid that sooner or later, this virus might just find itself among the 2 million people. And they are saying that human mistakes are being done, and it could just be one of those human mistakes that will cause a lot of damage to the Gaza community. Let me just tell you that what happened about 3 days ago, that people who came from Egypt about 3 weeks ago, around 1,632 people, I think. And on their, it was the day that they were supposed to leave their quarantine area. And when they tested them, 3 of them, they were tested positive. So it was like the last minute that they discovered 3 people among the 1,600 people that they were tested positive. So yes, there is a lot of fear. There is a lot of concern that one little or human mistake and it would be catastrophic if that were to happen in the coming days.
Abdelhamid, the UN is saying that it's actually using the term nightmare and catastrophe to describe what an outbreak in Gaza would look like. I mean, how do you see the situation? I know you're talking to us from New York, but how much more is it complicated by the fact that Gaza has been under an Israeli blockade for more than 13 years?
Well, thank you, Dareen, for inviting me to this great panel. I want to send my greetings to the Palestinian people in general and to the people in Gaza in particular. I want to salute them for their resilience and steadfastness. And I want to express my sympathy because their rights have been violated by everyone, almost by Israel first and foremost, by neighbors, by the PA, and by the de facto government, and by international community as well. In fact, I made it a point that every time there is a new president of the Security Council holds a press briefing on the first day of the month, I ask this question: why you don't take the Security Council members and go visit Gaza? And I never got a satisfactory answer, because we know the answer, but I keep repeating that because I want to put them at this spot. They cannot go against the will of the US government. Now, talking about Gaza, Gaza has been under blockade. In fact, I take the blockade back to 2000, in fact, not 2006, because that's after the second Intifada. Israel imposing new measures, very draconian measures against Gaza. And it was, of course, expanded since then, especially after the kidnapping of Gilad Shalit in 2006 and after. It also has been subject to 4 wars in 2006, 2008-9, and 2012, and 2014. So all this, put all that together, we find Gaza with 80% of them under poverty line. Unemployment is very high, a lot of destruction. The education system is very backward. The sewage system, the water system, we can go on and on. Now, how much the international community bears some responsibility? Yes, it does bear some responsibility. It is because there are clear-cut resolutions that deal with the case of Gaza. However, it has not been implemented. Resolution 1860, which has been passed after the caste-led war on 8th of January 2009. And that resolution deals with the blockade of Gaza and the humanitarian needs of Gaza. In fact, now it is facing another nightmare, which is exactly Corona, if Corona. And that's what the ambassador of Estonia, I asked him, the president of the council, when I asked him, what if Corona hits in Gaza? He said, that will be a nightmare. It's truly a nightmare for many reasons. First, it's one of the highly condensed area in the world. And you can find, an average of 4.3 persons per room. The second, the health system is almost collapsing. I would just want to remind you of that report, which was put by the UN country team in Gaza in 2012, talking about 2020. It's called 2020, will life be sustainable in Gaza? We are in 2020. So it's almost life is unsustainable in Gaza if we want to follow the rules of that, what is suggested in that report. So the health system is completely backward, and it's insufficient, and lack of medicine and lack of equipment. And bringing humanitarian aid is also subject to the Israeli diktat, which is the Resolution 1860, which made it clear that humanitarian aid has nothing to do with what's going on. It should be allowed without any interference. It is a human right. It's international humanitarian law. That is, it's supposed to be subject to just without, it should go without interruption. So, and take into account also the de facto government and the PA disassociation with the situation in Gaza, the blockade from the Egyptian side. I mean, the only crossing to Egypt, Rafah crossing, it's almost every day is closed around the year. And those who are allowed to go, they go through torture and humiliation, and most of them have to pay money. So that we end up with a situation in Gaza that is very unique, nothing like that in the world. And I could say also, to conclude, that the UN responsibility is double, in fact, one on the political path and one on the humanitarian path. Although we should give credit in the final analysis that there is a lot of a humanitarian organization there. I give credit to UNRWA, which is struggling despite the US pressure and the unfunding of UNRWA by 350 million a year. It is very, very challenging to come up with this loss. There is a country team in Gaza, which consists of WHO, UNICEF, OCHA, which is the humanitarian office of the UN, and they're all working to alleviate the suffering of Gaza. But the suffering of Gaza, it goes far beyond what is needed on daily basis.
Okay, a lot of important points. Fikr, over to you, particularly on this issue of humanitarian aid. You're working in a humanitarian organization, so how challenging has it been to do your job right now? And have you seen any impact on the ground of the defunding of UNRWA now in light of this coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, well, actually, the situation for the funding for a number of international organizations, mainly the US aid-funded organization. This has happened when the US cut the fund for the PA and also the UNRWA, and as well as the US funded organization. And there was actually significant impact on the services this organization was able to provide. But under the current circumstances, I have to say that, let me say, first of all, talking about the health situation within Gaza over the last, 13 years of the illegal blockade, and how this has had a significant impact on the healthcare system inside the Gaza hospitals. All Gaza hospitals suffered from chronic shortages of the drugs and consumables, suffered from the lack of equipment, the trained personnel, given that staff are not able to seek training opportunities out of Gaza. Also the start of the Great March of Return, which left more than 34,000 injuries in Gaza. Many of these have very complicated and need very long-term, medical treatment over many years, because some of them, they need sophisticated and complicated limb reconstruction surgeries and neurosurgeries as well. So it's been really overwhelming for the health situation, for the health system, funding, and the situation between the West Bank and Gaza, etc.
And so, now in this situation, have you seen that there has been any easing of restrictions on Gaza? Are the Israelis allowing more aid to come in to help with the coronavirus, or not at all? What have you seen?
What I've seen actually so far, I think there are some coordination with the WHO with regard allowing some items to come into Gaza. However, honestly, I would say this is these measures actually come very late. because for such a situation, the health system has to be prepared in advance.
Right.
So if the situation deteriorates further and if more cases are detected in Gaza tomorrow, so we are not prepared at all. So even if you are allowing items to come into Gaza, there is a challenging situation for international organizations to procure items at the moment, to procure ventilators. I know that, for example, ICRC, they've been trying to procure 15 ventilators for the Ministry of Health in Gaza, and they only managed to find one. I know that WHO and UNICEF also trying to secure some of these ventilators, and so far they are not managing. Or they say, and perhaps they will be able to bring these items by the end of May. So even easing these measures right now will not make a real difference, given that the situation, the outbreak might happen any minute. And if it happens, given how densely Gaza is, and in each 1 kilometer, square kilometer, there are more than 5,000 people. So actually,
which makes social distancing measures.
Yeah, it's impossible actually.
Right. Okay.
It's impossible in Gaza.
Let me ask you about reports of discussions between Israel and Hamas over providing medical aid to Gaza. Can you confirm these reports, if in fact they have taken place? The talks have taken place, indirect talks, of course. And what have you heard about them? You need to turn your microphone on.
Thank you, Dareen. From what I know is that there are some media reports in Israel which have basically indicated that a health of delegation from the Gaza Strip was sent to Israel to get training and to get more information on how to combat and how to deal with the spread of the coronavirus. That's what we know now. Let me just add what was mentioned by Fikr, that the Israelis haven't really done what is needed to deal with this catastrophe if it were to happen anytime in the near future. It's been very well known that the Israelis have made it clear to the Palestinians and to the Hamas authorities in Gaza that Israel will not allow testing kits or medical supplies to the Gaza Strip until Israel free Israeli soldiers and Israeli prisoners in the Gaza Strip. So Israel is trying to extort Hamas, is trying to extort the Palestinians, and that's why on another issue, by the way, that we see some kind of development on back channel negotiations between Hamas and Israel with regard to a prisoner deal which might develop in the coming few days. But anyway, thanks to WHO, World Health Organization, which have secured a number of testing kits to the Gaza Strip, either from Jordan or from other places, but the Israelis were not really cooperating enough to deal with this issue, even though that the Israelis know that if the virus were to erupt in the Gaza Strip, it will be not just catastrophic to the Palestinians in Gaza, it will also affect the Israelis. Because at the end of the day, Gaza, according to international law, is under Israeli occupation. Gaza is the responsibility, and the well-being of the 2 million people in Gaza is the responsibility of the Israeli occupation. So Israel should do much more to help the Palestinians, to help the medical staff and medical authorities in the Gaza Strip to deal and to get prepared for this crisis if it were to happen anytime in the future.
Omar, Shaban, you specifically wrote that Israel and Hamas must cooperate with one another to keep each other safe. What kind of cooperation are you talking about here? And do you agree that Israel has a lot at stake now if an outbreak were to happen in the Gaza Strip, because the international attention will be pointed at Israel?
We have to think out of the box and we have to go beyond the normal thing. I think Israel, Hamas, and the PA, three enemies, found themselves that in a position that they have to cooperate, even if they don't like each other, but they have to cooperate to fight against one common enemy, which is the corona. Israel is cooperating with the PA much more than before. there is a daily meeting, which is good. Israel with Hamas, with the de facto authority in Gaza, they have some sort of coordination, either directly or indirectly, at different level. I think the coronavirus has one positive thing. It showed to the three bodies that they need to work with each other to a certain level. Unfortunately, the cooperation between Hamas and the PA is very little. Between Hamas and Israel, between Israel and the PA is much more than before. I do believe that we need to think about this cooperation between the two might leave the way for more strategic thing, which is the prisoner deal. The prisoner deal or possible prisoner swap between Israel and Hamas was not on the table before the corona. When the corona came in, it becomes part of the discussion. It's on the table. I don't know if there is progress on it, but I think it will happen very soon, not tomorrow and not next week, but in a month. And this coordination among the two bodies, any other countries like between Russia and Italy, between Cuba and Europe, between China and Serbia, it will create some sort of self-confidence, and it will pave the way for much more. I do believe that Israel is in a dilemma. I'm not defending Israel, of course. In one hand, they realize the catastrophic situation if the breakout of the corona in Gaza, because in the past 14 years, and we have wrote a lot about it, that Gaza is very close to Israel. Whatever problem created in Gaza, Israel cannot avoid. Pollution, sewage, everything. And there are so many examples in the past 14 years where Israel has to break the policy of siege to enable Gaza to build sewage treatment plant, for example, because the pollution has flooded to the Mediterranean, which reached to the Israeli shore. In this corona, it shows that the Israeli push against Gaza is a big mistake, it's a big failure. At the end of the day, Israel will be impacted by this policy. But Israel need to deal with their enemy, with Hamas. So on one hand, they want to help, but on the other hand, they don't want to help because they are enemies. And still the situation between Israel and Hamas, each one, they don't recognize each one, and they don't think that they need to cooperate publicly. But at the end of the day, there is a common enemy. I think Israel want to do more to Gaza, not because they like us, but because they care about themselves, and they know that at the end of the day, by international law, Israel is still occupying power for the Gaza. The Israelis understand very well that they have legitimate and legal responsibility towards the situation in Gaza, towards everything, not only the corona, but the corona, health, water, electricity, everything. Of course, they don't want to do it. They want to see Gaza go far away to Egypt or to Sinai, but at the end of the day, this is not going to happen. We are Palestinian, we live in Gaza, but we are part of the Palestinian national identity. So Israel has some sort of responsibility. Another thing about siege is of course, the siege is the primary reason for the situation in Gaza, but Gaza lacks the resources. In the past 14 years, the unemployment becomes very high. The private sector in Gaza is operating in a very low level. 2/3 of the Gaza people are poor. The unemployment among fresh graduates is one of the highest rate in the world. Every year, 20,000 fresh graduates. Every month, we have 5,000 newborn. Gaza is 362 kilometers square. If, as I wrote in my article, if we want to keep social distance, we need Gaza. We need Gaza to be 3,000 kilometers square, this is impossible. So it's impossible to ask 2 million people to stay at home. They don't have electricity, so they have to go to the beach. They need to get out. I just came out from Gaza City now, and the streets are full of people. You cannot ask the people. This is why Hamas was reluctant in imposing lockdown on Gaza, because they cannot. They know that they cannot ask Jabalia refugee camp, which is inhabited by 150,000 inhabitants in 2 kilometers square. They cannot ask them to stay at home, especially the homes in Gaza are very small. There is no electricity. The average family members in Gaza, Dareen, is 6.2. Each family has 6.2 members. So it's impossible. So Hamas, when we meet as a civil society and as a especially in political economy of Gaza and Palestine, we meet with them. They focus more on the preventive measure. They want to prevent the corona to break out, because if they know if it break out, it will be uncontrollable. So they focus more. They allocate their utmost effort to prevent the corona to reach into Gaza, because they know fully if the one case tested positively within the society, it will be a nightmare. And I know that they prepare a scenario for 2,000 cases, as Fikr said. I think it wouldn't be 2,000, it will be 20,000. Then I don't know what the international community need to do. International community, which I'm not happy with some performance of some international organization, including the UN agencies, they need to do much more. They don't need to wait for the problem to come in and intervene. They need to talk more, and they need to voice up against the blockade, and they need to help the Palestinian National Authority to come back to Gaza and to achieve reconciliation. Another thing that we did not talk about it is the Palestinian national reconciliation. Let me finish with this. Palestinian people were thinking that Corona is bad enough to bring Hamas and Fatah to reconcile. They did not reconcile for the 2014 war. They did not reconcile when Jerusalem was taken by Israel. They did not reconcile when Trump moved the embassy of US from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Okay, now they said it's Corona, it's a problem for everybody. Let's come together. Unfortunately, the cooperation between the two is very little, and the emergency committee in Gaza is not part of the emergency committee that was established in the West Bank. And there are even the donation that come to the PA from different bodies. We don't know much about it. I cannot say very little. Some people think it's very little. I cannot say how much because there is no information. We don't know how much money come from West Bank into Gaza. Right. According to the Gaza Authority, I met with the head of the administrative committee in Gaza, and he said what we received from the PA is only $10,000. This is very little. $10,000 is nothing. Of course, Ministry of Health in Ramallah, they send some shipment to Gaza. They sent a shipment last week or 10 days ago that values of $1.2 million, but they say it's part of the annual health support into Gaza. It has nothing to do with the corona. So what I think is Israel and Hamas will continue to coordinate technically, logistically, either directly or indirectly, and I think this might lead to more strategic intervention and mediation between the two.
Okay, Abdelhamid, do you think that this could possibly pave the way for more strategic discussions? And also, the UN is saying that Israel is legally responsible for providing health services to ensure the safety of Palestinians in the occupied territories, which of course includes Gaza. But we've seen Israel in the past not living up to its responsibilities and violating countless UN Security Council resolutions. So does this call by the UN actually hold any weight to Israel?
Not when it comes to Israel. I mean, the UN has some weight everywhere except when it comes to Israel.
Right.
Israel is above the law. It has violated every resolution, every principle, every international law, every agreement. It has been violated by Israel. So Israel has been treating itself and supported by the US to be above the law. And I just want to say a comment on what I have heard. Israel is really not concerned about seeing the Palestinians infected by corona. I want to give you an example about East Jerusalem. The Palestinian Authority, they tried to extend their services to East Jerusalem. In fact, there were some voluntary committees, and they started a few clinics in Silwan and in East Jerusalem. And there is a minister of Jerusalem Affairs, and there is a governor. They both, when they became active, Israel went to the house of the Minister of Jerusalem Affairs. They roughed him up and took him a couple of hours in custody. And then they went back also to the governor. They did the same, and they were very rough with them. And they dismantled the clinic, which was established in East Jerusalem, and they did not allow the Palestinian Authority to work in East Jerusalem, based under that slogan that it's not their territory, it's the sovereignty belongs to Israel. Okay, so Israel, which claims to have sovereignty over East Jerusalem, did not also extend its services to East Jerusalem. That's why East Jerusalem has 1/3 of all the infected cases in all of Palestine, and the worst cases, and it could go even worse. So I don't think that Israel is really interested in helping the Palestinian. I mean, there are some maybe between the PA and some Israeli, some training, maybe a little bit of shipment, or they are now releasing some money, which belongs to the authority, to help the PA deal with the corona. So when it comes to Israel, we have to see this overall issue. There is two things we should talk about: control and responsibility. In fact, the one who controls the West Bank and Gaza does not bear responsibility. And the one who's bearing responsibility don't have control. So we ended up with a very special case in Gaza, that where Israel controlled the land, the sea, and the air, complete blockade, help, of course, assisted by the other border in Egypt, and the people there are left in a truly, as you just, some of you mentioned, it's a human prison. It's the largest human prison in the world. And no one wants to take responsibility. And the people who are the de facto government don't have the means, don't have the power, don't have the resources to address all these tragic issues and tragic needs in Gaza. So we are, in this case, what should the international community do? Is it just appeals, just to send messages? There is one overall representative of the UN. His name is Nikolai Mladinov. And I would criticize him until tomorrow in terms of his political performance and the way he handles himself dealing with the Israelis and the Palestinians. And he's been criticized by many. But in terms of humanitarian, I think he put a team together that is functioning between Gaza and the West Bank. And I thought that the contact which happened between Palestinian and the Israeli in Gaza is not through direct negotiation or direct contact between Gaza and the Israeli, but through this team, which is led by Mladinov. Mladinov, he tries to coordinate with this coronavirus activities between Israel, the PA, and the Gaza de facto government. And that's why I think the Hamas is working with this team through the umbrella of Nikolai Mladinov and not necessarily directly. And thanks God, I mean, the Gazan had been accustomed to being isolated and to being quarantined. In fact, the world should learn from the Gazan and not the other way around. 13 years of a strict blockade on Gaza had taught them how to be resilient and how to survive and how to live with little means. And as we see it now, I hope, and I don't believe also the corona will spread out as some people think, because of the situation in Gaza and these measures and this kind of personal responsibility that each one feels for their neighbor and for their community.
Is there anything right now, Abdelhamid, that the UN member states can do? Obviously, financial aid is one. Is there anything else besides financial?
I mean, there is an appeal for 42 million. I think they got some 32 million of them to deal with the corona. And now Israel is releasing some money from the money that held by the Israelis, the tax money that Israeli holds. They will release some. But the international community can do more. They can send the needed equipment, they needed ventilators, they needed medicine. And I think there are something coming, but again, the financial situation is not as good. I mean, UNRWA is working, and WHO and the country team that I spoke about in Gaza and in the West Bank, which consists of all these organizations, they put themselves together as a pool of international organizations. They work together to alleviate these problems. And now it's one of their direct and immediate attention is paid to corona. And thanks God, as I said, it's not that dangerous in Gaza. So a few cases in the West Bank, a little bit more, but also, and I'm very concerned about East Jerusalem.
Mkhaimar, we were just mentioning UNRWA just a moment ago, and what UNRWA is saying is that, in fact, the economic consequences have been devastating, even though you have not many people, thankfully, in Gaza infected with coronavirus, but it is impacting the economy quite severely. They're also expecting unemployment to rise as a result of this. Have you seen any evidence of that? And what is the impact financially and economically on the Strip?
Good. Let me say that the situation has been already bad before Corona. Figures with regard to poverty, unemployment, the collapse of the private sector, lack of services, education, health, and etc. Most of these services have been outdated and not enough to deal with the needs of 2 million people. Now, with the coronavirus, as a result of the presidential decree, which was established on March 5th, the President Mahmoud Abbas declared the state of emergency. And as a result of declaring the state of emergency, schools are off, universities are off, many businesses are not functioning normally. So, and as a result of that, levels of poverty have increased, levels of unemployment also have increased, with no resources, no natural resources, and no financial support coming from outside of Gaza. And UNRWA, which is responsible for more than 1.4 million people in Gaza who are designated as refugees, UNRWA is not able to carry out with its services that have been supporting the Palestinians for decades now, as a result of defunding by the US and lack of financial resources from others. UNRWA just came out a few days ago saying that next year they do not have enough budget to carry out with the rest of 2020. So the situation on the ground is going from bad to worse. And to be honest with you, the PA who should be doing much more to help the Palestinians in Gaza, they are not. Until this moment, as I'm speaking to you right now, the PA took some what we call it punitive measures. These punitive measures were imposed on Gaza starting from April 2017. Those measures were slashing down on PA salaries in the Gaza Strip by about sometimes from 30% to 50%. The PA over the past 3 years have sent almost half of its public servants in Gaza into early retirement. And they even created or invented a new system, which they call it financial retirement, which means that PA employees in the health sector or in the education sector, they are carrying, they still go to work, they carry out with their duties, but they get a retirement salary instead of getting their full salary. So the situation is already bad, as I mentioned to you, and by the measures which have been taken because of Corona, now, for example, let me just say that the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt is almost completely closed for almost 2 months now. It was open about 3 weeks ago to allow some 1,600 Palestinians to come back to Gaza. The Israelis are not allowing anyone to get out of Gaza into Israel. Only severe medical cases are allowed to cross from Gaza into Israel, because anyone who goes from Gaza into Israel, when they come back from Israel, they have to be in quarantine for about 21 days. So those Corona measures have created more pressure on the community, more economic pressure, more financial pressure. And we are in the middle of the month of Ramadan. We are approaching the Eid in about 2 weeks, and financial difficulties are widespread. Let me tell you just one last thing about where I work. I work at Al-Azhar University in Gaza. For the past 3 months, we haven't gotten paid regularly. We got paid only a fraction of our salaries because of not too many students have paid their tuition. Not too many students have registered for the second semester. And as of that, about 600 employees at Al-Azhar University are facing very severe financial difficulties. And this can be said about many other universities, many other private schools and kindergarten here in Gaza.
Fikr, are people, you talk to a lot of people on the ground, are they worried more about about an outbreak of coronavirus? Are they more worried about the economic implications as a result of what's happening in this virus?
Well, actually, both in Gaza. And honestly, many people they are quite worried about. We have many people. They work on daily basis, and they earn their money actually from a daily work. So it's not like proper jobs, but also there is even worry inside the organization that employ people, and some people they already. Some organizations, I know that they are discussing this with their staff now with the lack of the funding. Honestly, MAB is my organization, the one I work for. It's based in the UK, and because the issue about Corona, it's a global thing. And actually our fundraising has been impacted significantly. And so the discussion about the staffing, it has to start at some point. I know it has already started at some other organizations, and eventually it will come to us and other organizations as well. So this is, as Dr. Mkhaimar and Omar and Dr. Abdelhamid mentioned, it's something that people in Gaza worried about the spread of the corona, given the collapsing health system and not a prepared health system, but on the other hand looking around and figuring that their life is at risk. I have to say that the population in Gaza has been suffering of malnutrition, which was in rise actually during the 13 years of a blockade. We have a significant number of people with the chronic disease. 36% of the people above 5, they suffer from chronic disease like hypertension or diabetes, for example. So these people actually, all of them, they rely on a specific type of food, a specific, their needs for medication, and the lack of the resources, even for the health sector, will have impact on their treatment plan and their, well-being. So it's a real concern actually for everyone.
Yeah, it really is. It's quite a dire situation from what all of you are describing. But Omar, I'd like to end with you, because when I read your article, you mentioned one thing that really struck out, and I'm recalling it now. You said that when news of confirmed cases broke out in Gaza, Gazans coped with the stress of that situation by turning to comedy as well as to cynicism. So I wonder if we can just end on that note, and you can tell us and the viewers what you saw and what you heard, and how Gazans were able to cope with the situation. You'll have to turn your microphone on.
Thank you, Dareen. And I born in Gaza. I grown all my life, 57 years in Gaza. I love the Gazan. I want to stay with the Gazan people. In one hand, they are really very tough. They are very stubborn. They enjoy their life with the minimum. They are very tough. They are not easy. They are not spoiled. But at the same time, I don't like when international community describe Gaza by resilience. We are not resilient. We are like any other human being. We are in need for anything. We need to enjoy people in Gaza. Why we want Gaza to be resilient? I met with many international who praise our resilience in Gaza. This is not true. Gaza people are normal one. We don't expect Gazan to be heroes in everything. They need food. And when you talk to the people, they are very pragmatic and they understand what is needs. They want to work in Israel. They want to go back. They want the closing, the siege to be lifted. This is why when Gaza people said that, was watching the TVs, saying that the airport in France or in Europe was closed, Gaza said, okay, what does it mean for us? We have no airport. And they said, okay, travel bans between Italy and France, or between America and Canada. Then there's the Gazan, they said, okay, we have been under siege for 14 years, and anyone want to learn how to live under siege, they should come to us. And Gaza people can establish a school to teach you in the UK how to live in a siege for 14 years. I hope it wouldn't last for 14 years, but Gaza can be passionate and can be excellence of a school to teach people how to live in siege for 14 years. And the 3 wars, also and continue to live and to continue to smile. If you walk in Gaza now, thousands of people in the street enjoying, noising, a lot of noise, dancing, singing in the street. It's a very lively community. Gaza deserves much, much better than we have. And this is what I say all the time. The Israeli policy towards Gaza is a big mistake, is a big catastrophe to the Israelis themselves. And many Israelis realize that their policy towards Gaza was a very bad, not only to Gaza. I don't say that they love us, but it backfired on them. Now Israel has to deal with the situation in Gaza because it's part of their responsibility.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. Fikr, Abdelhamid, Dr. Mkhaimar, and Omar, thank you so much. Really great discussion. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.